Hello friends, how are we? I am glad that you guys are here. Thank you. I'm going to do this at the beginning. Please like, share, and subscribe to this video. Subscribe to my channel. Share with all your friends so that we grow the message. Because once I get to 100 people, 100 subscribers on YouTube, I can have my own little tagline, and that makes it a lot easier for me to be found. So yes, please. And you can support my work, my herbalist work, through my website. I have an online pharmacy shop. I make all the remedies. I grow most of the herbs. The ones I don't grow, I forage, and everything gets made with fresh plant material. All of it. That makes the medicine so much more powerful, so much more amazing, and it is really getting you guys like farm fresh herbal apothecary offerings. And that can be found in the link in the notes below. And I want to tell a little story today because story is important, and this story is a little esoteric, and by a little esoteric I mean completely esoteric. And I'm inside the apothecary because my husband is digging a trench for the expansion project we're working on, and it's like 100 degrees already at 11 a.m. So I'm inside today, but I thought I would take a few minutes to share the story of Mugwort magic from the beginning. Because I allude to a lot of things on like social media, and these kinds of stories I think are super important. Not only because it connects you to me, but it connects you to your own intuition, your own ethereal body and vibrational experience that you are as a human being, and how we can tap into those easily as any human being can. I do not believe I am special. I believe I have been cultivating a relationship with this realm for nearly 2 decades. Probably longer, because I used to hang out with trees a lot when I was a kid, but anyway, I want you guys to be empowered to know that this is just a normal thing that happens. It's not anything, it's out of the ordinary from modern society, but when we were living more connected to the earth, I feel probably all of our ancestors had their specific modality and how they connected to the ethereal body, the vibrational body. It was different, of course, because we're all different humans. There's different expressions, there's different ways. I have tapped into many ways. So again, like 20 years of cultivating this, working with nature for that time as well, has really helped to have a deep dive into what it is to be a spiritual being. So Mugwort magic goes back to 2017. Yes, yep, 2017 summer. I was on track to be a super scientific herbalist. I was on track. Sure, I was meditating, sure, I was connecting to spirit, but I had separated my path as herbalist from my ethereal practices back then, because most of my teachers that I had worked with then, and even after, there was a teacher I worked with after that felt that I had been trained to associate herbalism with science only, because that was the only way that herbalism would be accepted by the mainstream societal expression of medicine. So lots of you, I'm sure, who've gone through like formal herbalism training have had similar experiences. We're sure you tap into your intuition, but you keep that far away from your actual practice as an herbalist, because we need to be taken seriously. Herbalism is not legal in this country, the United States, and so we need to be taken seriously, and by completely aligning ourselves with science only, that's how we're going to be taken seriously as herbalists. And before this 2017 time, in the first almost decade, few years off, like probably 7 years of my practice, I was like on the science track. I was taking prerequisite program that was geared towards naturopathic medicine, but I was going to filter it into the PhD program at the University of Wyoming. They have a brilliant PhD program for botany, and I was going to be a scientist herbalist. I was going to take all of the constituents. I was going to do what scientists do. Take the individual constituents, put them in a body, show how they react scientifically and chemically in a controlled environment. That's where I was going. Something else derailed that. I'm not going to get into that right now because it has nothing to do with it. But I'm just trying to express that I had a very scientific root to my herbalism practice, and I still maintain that because I do like science and I do like all of that juicy bits. It's evolving, as everything will and does. That is a lifelong practice. But what happened in 2016, I married a man who was incredibly abusive. Incredibly abusive. I was also completely unhealed from my childhood and teenage traumas at that time. And I was a totally different person than I am now. And my family had to extract me from this terrifyingly abusive situation because I was totally brainwashed by this person. I had to be extracted. I had to be taken out of the situation, and I was just told to cooperate. And I did, because I love my family. And it was a really gnarly time. I had to leave Wyoming for a time because I didn't trust myself to not go back to this marriage, even though I knew like it was dangerous. It had become very dangerous for me to be in. So I moved back to Washington to live with my dad and stepmom for almost a year. I did end up back in Wyoming, clearly, but that was after some very deep dives. And I spent that year when I was in Washington working a little bit, but mostly I was working remotely, mostly healing. The PTSD I had during that time that I was experiencing, the anxiety and panic attacks I was experiencing was rather debilitating. I could hardly go out in public alone for quite a while. So what I was doing was hours of yoga a day, hours of meditation a day, working with an awesome spiritual mentor, taking classes on debriefing trauma, doing what I do, which is research and heal. And I was spending a very, very large amount of time hiking and being in the forest with my plant allies, right? But what's really interesting when a person, and again, I don't think I'm special, I think I just happen to already have this history of like meditation and stuff like this and tapping into the ethereal realms. When a person is like healing from something like trauma like that and working on it diligently and processing the emotions instead of and steering clear of any victim narratives. I think there's a lot of victim narratives surrounding especially domestic violence. But something I was super adamant about is I'm not going to join these domestic violence survivor victim groups. I am not going there because that does not resonate with a healing process from how I was taught. I was going to really process through the emotions and also take a very strong look at my component of getting myself into situations that were dangerous for my physical emotional, mental well-being, right? I believe that, and maybe this is because of Carolyn Meese. I found her really, really young age, The Anatomy of the Spirit, that teaches you about how our thoughts, our actions, and our essentially vibration is a huge component of developing disease, dis-ease. Forget I said disease. Dis-ease, it's a word I'm changing. And her book really, I feel like that was probably part of the core of how I could go through this process. And I had a really awesome therapist who was more of a spiritual mentor, who I was working with. So I was going to the root, right? And I think that's vital in all human ailments, all of them. From the cold, from a common cold, all the way through to severe PTSD and trauma, and everything in between. We have to take responsibility for our healing. Therefore, we have to take responsibility to what got us into that need to heal our bodies or our mind or our spirit. So, I don't remember the exact time of this, but it was one of the first times that it was somewhere in that summer of 2017 when I was spending time in the woods with plants alone a lot and meditating and yogaing and all the things. I don't remember exactly where or when or how, but it was somewhere in there. But it was the first time that I had my body taken over by spirit. And what happened was a spirit man, came through the forest towards me and shared with me some really, really powerful messages. He had a black wolf with him. Spirit, those of you who have seen spirits understand that they're floating, but they're also walking. It's wild. So he shared with me my path as a healer. I don't know the time frame. I was in the woods, don't know how long it took. I walked into a grove of Osha, and this vision happened. And I came out of the vision. I was walking, right? I walked in. I came out of the vision on the ground. I don't know how I got on the ground, but he shared with me my path as a healer. And he expressed to me how we were connected through the spirit realm. And actually, this guide stayed with me until I had my son. I haven't connected with him since I had my son, which I find to be interesting. I don't know why, but I have not seen him since, and I haven't felt his presence since. And I know that guides can come and go out of your life. Anyway, he essentially told me it was vital for me to meld my herbalist experience with my ethereal experience, with my spiritual experiences. And I trust that. Even then, I trusted that more than I trust I don't, the movements of society I don't trust at all, but I trust that because I knew that when I had not followed my intuition, not followed my gut instinct, I had really betrayed myself and had to learn very, very hard lessons, including the extraction of my previous life before I landed with this gorgeous one. So I started to do more active participation in blending my spiritual experiences with herbalism. Instead of just finding the plants and giving a prayer of thanksgiving, which I always did, and honoring them, I started to sit with them more, actually take time to just sit. And I was sitting with yarrow, And I got a similar vision after this time with this spirit guide in the forest. And I got the blend of Mugwort magic. Okay, sorry, I got a call. My babysitter called. So trying to get my train of thought back. 7-month pregnant lady, and my train of thought goes all over the place. So yeah, I started blending those two, and Yarrow gave me this gorgeous blend of Mugwort magic. And because I didn't know any better, and I was still like cultivating the relationship with the ethereal, with my ancestors and guides and all the plant spirits and all the things, right? Like I was still practicing, I was still in the beginning stages of this coming to full fruition for me. I wasn't listening very clearly, right? Your human ego in the beginning gets in the way a lot, and it's really that's a tricky place to like, what is ego and what is ethereal, what is, you know, and later now I have tools that help me decipher, right? But back then I couldn't decipher, and so I got this blend, and it was Mugwort, Yarrow, and peppermint. And I said, yes, that sounds great. I will act on this blend. And I made a tincture, of course, because that's what I did back then. I only made tinctures and salves. I still have only made well, I started fermenting. I don't know. I think I was fermenting then. Yeah, but mostly vegetables. Anyway, back to this. I started taking that blend for like connecting with my ancestors, the ethereal realms, my guide, as I went through my days, simultaneously setting the intention to really like, how am I going to move into my next phase of life? Because like that previous life had completely deteriorated, and there were a lot of like projects in motion, including an herb farm, and I had a really glorious community where I lived outside of this nightmare of a relationship. But like, I was really like, my whole life had crumbled, and I had lost a lot of direction, and I was second guessing myself and questioning everything as I went through experiencing these panic attacks and debilitating anxiety. And thank goodness I'm stubborn, like, oh my gosh. But I started working with this blend throughout the day to help with panic attacks, but also like feel deeply into each situation I was finding myself in, so that I could like, hopefully, my intention was to let my intuition guide me before my human ego, because I knew that would lead me to where I was meant to be, right? And what I noticed happening during that time was my dreams were exploding, like the dream world at night when I was sleeping, and I would wake up and I was diligently doing all of the things, right? I was including journaling my dreams and sharing that with my spiritual mentor / therapist. And she was pretty adamant about me not making any moves, which I did not. I listened to her for a year. I did not make any sudden moves. I just like sunk into this healing space. But I was like watching all of these signs, watching all of these things that were coming through. And I felt that Mugwort magic was a major, major, major part of that, because the herbs are somewhat like well, not really peppermint, but peppermint was in there, I think, mostly for taste, and like relaxing the nervous system. But Yarrow and Mugwort are very like dream, ethereal, weaving your spirit body together, helping to protect yourself and keep your energy secure within you, helping to like tighten any energetic leaks that are pouring out of your chakra system, Yarrow. And then Mugwort is all about enlivening the dreamscape. Sure, there are other like physical properties to Mugwort, but That's how I've predominantly worked with it. And so going through this time with Mugwort Magic was huge for me, and it helped me to reconnect with the spiritual realm, reconnect with my dreams as an individual human, a single human, and know the path that I was moving towards. So by the end of this year, I knew Wyoming was still my place. I love it here. I always have. Even, when I was a teenager, I told my mom I was going to live here, I've always felt very connected to this place. The wild mountains, open spaces, all the things. Turns out my human design needs a place exactly like where I live, which is very interesting. But I knew that I wanted to grow herbs and make medicine, and I was an herbalist and a healer, and I knew I wanted to blend spirituality in with herbalism and not go the heavy scientific route that I had been going, right? I knew more of the answers were within the spirit body of plants. So I just continued cultivating all of that using Mugwort Magic. And it was a really glorious thing. And then fast forward to last year, maybe it was 2 years ago. It was before Sawyer. So it was like 3 years. Yes, it was probably around 2021. That makes sense. I had another one of these experiences where my body was completely taken over. Like, these are not, I've had them more often, like closer together since moving here and being with my husband, starting this business, the farm, in my Enchantment Creek farm operation. I've had a lot more, but this one was like, I was working through anxiety because 2021 was insane. I was working through some anxiety around all of the stuff that was happening and really trying to disconnect from, any narrative surrounding what we were all going through as a collective and come back to grounding my body, because I knew I was kind of spiraling out at that time with fear, not of the virus, of the agenda, and I needed to disconnect from that. So I had Mugwort Magic at my altar. I was meditating, and all of a sudden I had these beings, guides, take over, and they each represented a piece of Mugwort Magic. And they were like, "Lady, honey, you made this incorrectly." And I was like, "What? What do you mean? Like, what? You're supposed to ferment it. All right?" It was like 8:30 in the evening. I went out to the gardens, into the apothecary, and I made my first batch of fermented Mugwort Magic per their instructions. And that ethereal body of the blend enhanced beyond recognition for me. And after ingesting it, when it was, I made a small batch because of course I'm going to try it first, and I'm going to give it to some friends and see what everyone thinks. And my other friend, who's super, super spiritual and meditates all the time, we tried it, and it's fermented, so yes, there's alcohol in it. It is bottled in a wine bottle now. But the dream world and the giddy euphoria that we felt drinking it after fermentation and taking that into a meditative ceremony was glorious. It was glorious. And as a ferment, you don't need as much. You drink I don't know, we might have drank more than this, let's be honest. But probably like I was drinking before I was pregnant, and before I was nursing, I was drinking like 2 ounces before meditation, before ceremony, just to get really tapped in and to invite all of that dream and life path, soul path, ancestor connection in. And it just enhances that experience of really tapping into the ethereal body. So fast forward again to last solstice, I was getting ready to make mugwort magic, as I always had for Enchantment Creek, which was a tincture. And again, these same mugwort magic beings took over and said, no, you're actually supposed to ferment everything in the apothecary, but we're starting here. So that is how mugwort magic came to be. And came to be for you in this gorgeous wine bottle. Gorgeous. Hand-corked, labeled. These ones aren't labeled yet. I'm still labeling because they're tedious to label, but that's how it came and why it came to the apothecary and why I feel fermentation is the future of herbalism. Because the fermentation not only taps into the chemical constituents of the plants, it also taps in deeply to the spirit body of the plants, the vibrational imprint of the plants through the waters, the vibrational imprint of the water that I use, and the local raw honey that I use to ferment these herbs, the deep, deep ceremony that goes into harvesting blends like this. That is all harnessed within the energetic imprint of the plants that are then totally, they're vibrating throughout the entire fermented elixir. And after all this research I've been doing over the last year, those of you guys who are watching the blog and paying attention to the vibrational healing stuff that I'm talking about, this is that. This is the vibrational imprint of the plant paired with the chemical constituents of the plant to come into your body and be infused into your crystalline structure of gel structured water. You are tapping into your vibration through these types of plant elixirs. And that, from all that I've shared with you and all that I've gone through and worked through, that is what really, really heals our bodies. When we tap into the vibration of our sacred structured waters that are holding every piece of our being and reverberating out into the world through the electromagnetic field that we are healing when we are paying attention to those pieces of our being. And that has to do with what foods we ingest, what waters we ingest, if we're ingesting chemical pharmaceuticals or if we're ingesting gorgeous fermented small batch herbs instead. We're going to vibrate that out into the collective, into every single person we touch, and we are going to shift the collective through this medicine. So, I could continue, but again, I think we're at almost 30 minutes. And I try and keep these at 30 minutes. Maybe I'll do a podcast. I don't know. Right now I don't have the capacity for that, but we'll grow this for now. And Mugwort Magic is available in an insanely, like the smallest batch I've done since the beginning of Enchantment Creek. There are 16 bottles. I have 12 left. After just a couple of days of launching. The price point is higher than normal apothecary offerings because it ages for a year, and I have a ton. Fermentation is a very, very like simple but very complex at the same time. There's lots of steps, okay? It's an absolute process. It's an absolute gorgeous process, and getting it all correctly done for a year is not easy. But again, because I've been fermenting a long time before this for my home, I already kind of knew how to roll. So yeah, I will link everything below. Jump on getting the blend now before it is gone. And I love you guys. And again, do all the YouTube things that I said in the beginning. And thanks for listening this long.